You're driving home. It's just another normal night. Nothing unusual, nothing illegal, nothing out of the ordinary. Maybe you're thinking about dinner, maybe you're listening to music, maybe you're just trying to get home and relax. And then suddenly, those flashing red and blue lights hit your rearview mirror. In an instant, everything changes. You pull over. Your heart rate ticks up just a little. The officer steps out of the patrol car and walks toward your window. Calm, professional, maybe even friendly. And then comes a question that sounds so simple, so harmless, that almost everyone answers it without thinking. Do you know why I pulled you over? It feels like small talk. It feels like a normal question, but it's not. That question is one of the most effective traps used during a traffic stop, and most people walk right into it without even realizing it. Because the moment you start guessing, explaining, or trying to help, you're not helping yourself, you're helping build a case. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 7 of the most common traffic stop traps, mistakes that can turn a simple warning into a search, a prolonged detention, a DUI investigation, or even an arrest. And more importantly, I'm going to give you exact phrases you can use, calm, respectful, and legally smart, so you don't talk yourself into trouble. And you'll want to stick around all the way through because the final trap is the one that catches people when the stop drags on, when you're sitting there thinking, why am I still here? That's where things can go from uncomfortable to serious very quickly. Let's start with the first and most common mistake. You're asked, do you know why I pulled you over? What most people do is try to guess. They say things like, was I speeding? Or maybe I drifted a little. Or even worse, they start volunteering information that was never asked for. I only had 2 beers, officer. I think I'm okay to drive. That right there is where things go wrong. Because now, even if the officer wasn't completely sure why they stopped you or didn't have enough to move forward, you've just handed them something they can use. Your guess can become the reason. Your words can become the justification. This isn't a conversation. It's information gathering. So instead of guessing, instead of trying to explain, you keep it simple. No, officer. Why did you stop me? Say it calmly. Say it respectfully. And then stop talking. That response does something important. It shifts the responsibility back where it belongs. You're not being difficult. You're not being rude. You're simply not volunteering information. Now, in some places, officers may be required to tell you why you were stopped if you ask. In others, they may not. You might get a response like, I'm the one asking questions tonight, and that's fine, because this isn't the place to argue. The roadside is not where you debate legality. That happens later, in court if necessary. Which brings us to the second trap, the mindset trap. A lot of people think the goal during a traffic stop is to win the interaction, to prove something, to argue their way out of it. That's a mistake. The roadside is not where you win. It's where you avoid making things worse. The moment your tone becomes confrontational, everything changes. Suddenly, it's no longer just a traffic stop. It becomes about officer safety and non-compliance. And those 2 words give officers a lot of authority to escalate the situation. Now you're being asked to step out of the car. Maybe you're being told to sit on the ground. Maybe even handcuffs come into play, all in the name of safety. And it happens fast. So instead of arguing, instead of escalating, you control the tone. You say, officer, I will comply with your lawful orders. I do not consent to searches, and I'm not answering any questions. That sentence is powerful, it's respectful, it's clear, and it sets boundaries without creating conflict. But let's be real for a second. This doesn't mean you ignore basic legal requirements. If you're asked for your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, you provide them. That's part of driving legally. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you can refuse to identify yourself or operate a vehicle without proper documentation. That's not how the law works. Your job isn't to challenge everything. Your job is to protect yourself intelligently. Now let's talk about the third trap, one that catches people who think they're being cooperative, the consent search. This one usually comes wrapped in politeness. The officer might say something like, if you don't have anything illegal in the car, you wouldn't mind if I take a quick look, right? Or, it'll only take a minute. And in that moment, a lot of people say yes, because they think, I have nothing to hide. But that's not the point. The moment you consent, you've just removed one of your biggest protections. You've made their job easier. And here's the reality. Searches don't always go neatly. Your car can be taken apart, your belongings moved around, and even if nothing is found, you're left dealing with the aftermath. So instead, You keep it simple. Officer, I do not consent to any searches. And then you stop talking. If they decide to search anyway, that's not something you're going to stop with words in that moment. That's something handled later, legally. Your job is simply not to give permission. Now let's move to something that seems small, but matters a lot. Your movements. Officers are trained to watch hands. Every movement you make is being observed and potentially interpreted. If you start reaching around, digging through compartments, leaning under seats, even if your intentions are completely innocent, it can be described later as suspicious behavior. That's how simple actions turn into statements like, I observed furtive movements. So here's what you do. You pull over safely. You keep your hands visible, ideally on the steering wheel. If it's dark, turn on your interior light. Speak slowly and clearly, and if you need to reach for something, say it first. My registration is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for it now. That one sentence removes ambiguity. It removes suspicion. It shows control. Now let's talk about another moment where people make things harder than they need to. Being asked to step out of the vehicle. Many people believe they can refuse this. In reality, in most situations, officers are legally allowed to ask drivers and passengers to step out. The trap is arguing about it, because the argument quickly becomes non-compliance, and non-compliance can escalate into something much bigger. So instead, you clarify, is that a request or a command? If it's a command, you comply calmly. And as you do, you can say, I'm complying, but I do not consent to any searches. That way, you're protecting yourself while avoiding escalation. Now let's talk about a situation that can go wrong very quickly if a weapon is involved. If you legally carry, you need to understand your state's laws. Some places require you to inform the officer immediately, others only if asked. Some don't require it at all, but lying is never an option. The biggest mistake here is surprising the officer. If your documents and a firearm are in the same place, and you reach for one while exposing the other, the situation can escalate instantly. So keep them separate, and never make sudden movements. If disclosure is required, or if you're asked, you say, Officer, I want to let you know I am lawfully carrying. How would you like me to proceed? Then you let them guide the interaction. Calm, controlled, no surprises. Finally, we get to the trap that most people don't understand. The one that happens when the stop should be over, but somehow, it isn't. You've already been waiting. The officer goes back to the car, runs your information, comes back, leaves again. Time passes, and you start thinking, why am I still here? This is where you need to reset the situation. Once the original purpose of the stop is complete, you ask a simple question, am I free to go? If the answer is yes, you leave. If the answer is no, then you follow up. Am I being detained? And for what reason? You're not arguing. You're clarifying. And if things continue without clear answers, you take the next step. I'm going to remain silent, and I want a lawyer. Because again, the goal is not to win the conversation. The goal is to give nothing that can be used against you later. So let's bring this all together. Don't guess why you were stopped. Don't argue or escalate. Don't consent to searches. Control your movements. Comply with lawful orders without giving up your rights. Avoid creating unnecessary safety concerns, and when the stop should be over, ask if you're free to go. Here's the truth most people don't realize. Traffic stops don't turn into serious situations because of what's in the car. They turn into serious situations because of what's said, how it's said, and how the situation escalates. So be polite, be calm, keep your hands visible, and most importantly, be intentional with your words. Because in moments like this, silence is often your strongest protection. If you made it this far, you already understand something most drivers don't, and that knowledge alone can make a huge difference. If this helped you, make sure you stick around for more content like this. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced any of these situations? Did you know what to do, or did you learn the hard way? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next one.